Hello, family members. Oh boy, is this going to be a very different video for me. I did something before making this video that I don't think I've ever done before. I literally made the thumbnail first. But, well, let's get into it. So, if you are unaware, Mehdi Hasan is a fantastic journalist who, until relatively recently, was sort of a rotating host on MSNBC. They have their, like standard everyday hosts that have like a show Monday through Friday generally, like Lawrence O'Donnell or Joy Reid or something like that. But they also have people who have like a weekend show and then also fill in for the normal, regular hosts when they're on assignment or have a day off or whatever the reason is, right? And so while you weren't necessarily seeing him, Mehdi, every day at a specific time consistently or anything like that, you got to see a decent amount of him because he was filling in for various hosts or hosting his weekend show. And he's the guy who like literally wrote the book on how to win any argument, right? And so there's a lot of like clips of his that went viral, a lot of the people that he chose, the voices he chose to highlight, the people in power that he chose to interrogate, and boy did he interrogate. That's sort of how we ended up where we're at. It was always very interesting to me, and I always kind of followed him pretty closely, in so much that I ever followed any, like MSNBC personality, like say a Rachel Maddow or whatever, somebody who you really think is got a lot of good thoughts, and you want to hear their perspective on things, right? Well, what I didn't know until quite a bit of time later was that he got, well, it's complicated. I guess what they wanted to do was demote him, and then he was like, no. And he left MSNBC. So I guess you can't necessarily say that he was fired, but from all outside appearances, it looks like they wanted to demote him because he was interrogating the wrong types of people about the actions of the Israeli government. And that's a heck of a thing, MSNBC, the lefty channel, right? No. Again, I don't know how many times people need to say this, but MSNBC is not the lefty channel, okay? There may be people on there that are a little more left to center, but there are a lot of people on there that are straight up Republicans. Like, MSNBC is still corporate media and still elevates Michael Steele, former RNC chair, Nicole Wallace, Republican, Joe Scarborough, their main morning guy, Republican. Like, MSNBC is not super, super, super left wing here or anything, okay? But they are generally a little more open to interrogating the left's point of view or representing the left's point of view. And they certainly, I would say, lean Democratic. But, Democrats are the centrists and the left. So you have to keep that in mind. Just because something is, very lean Democratic doesn't mean that it's left. It could very well just be centrist, because most centrists, even some center-right people, are in the Democratic Party now because the Republican Party is such a mess. Anyway, so unceremoniously, he was just gone from MSNBC, and I didn't notice for I don't even know how long, really. And the reason for that probably is partially because of how I watch MSNBC, which is on YouTube. I haven't had cable in a long time. And so I have a tendency, I have to need to watch new content, and it needs to be fairly dry and non-fictional. For some reason, my brain just needs that. And so I watch a lot of news sources, and the way that I watch MSNBC is mixed in with, like clips of particular segments or highlights of shows, and I'm very selective about, what I consume. Like, I do not care for Nicole Wallace. I don't generally watch her segments or Morning Joe segments or anything like that, but I really like Rachel Maddow or Ari Melber or Stephanie Rule, Alex Wagner. There are people on there that I'm into, and some of them I'm Lawrence O'Donnell is so calm. Sometimes I just watch him just to laugh because he's so certain about things that he can't possibly know, and it just cracks me up. He went into this whole thing about what jurors are going to think about Donald Trump's makeup. It was just it was hilarious. It was journalistic fan fiction or whatever. So I can't take him seriously. But there are people on that channel that I do take rather seriously, and I was literally shocked when I found out that he had been, kind of forced out. And so, of course, my first thought was well, what is he doing now? He's got to be doing something new. He must have gone to some other channel or network or whatever. And then I found out that he is creating his own media company. He's got Zeteo going. And I'm that's pretty interesting. It's kind of cool to think about the fact that he'll be able to raise the voices he wants to raise and interrogate the people in positions of power that he wants to interrogate without some corporate overlord telling him what he can and can't do. Okay, that's pretty interesting. But of course, I don't have income. I'm living off of savings. I'm disabled. I don't really have the money to subscribe. But I go and I check out his website anyway. And I find out, oh, you can, just subscribe to their newsletter for free. I'm well, at least that's something. And so I start getting his emails, and they're really interesting, editorials or interviews, videos of previous town halls that were put on for subscribers so that they got to ask questions directly of him or of special guests. And then it starts being on YouTube too. And now you can subscribe to the Zeteo YouTube channel for free and get all this great content. And they update frequently. They speak to a wide variety of people, and they all have unique perspectives and credentials. Like the one that I was watching this morning while I was making the thumbnail was a woman who is Palestinian but also lives in Israel or lived in Israel. I'm not exactly certain. I got a little mixed up on that, but her perspective is just very different than anyone that I've heard. And there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise about what's going on in Israel and Palestine and Gaza and the West Bank and Iran and the Middle East and all over, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes you just need someone to cut through all that noise and just, the bottom line is X. And boy, is he good at doing that and getting people who he can speak to and interview that can help you figure out what's going on and see what's going on and feel confident enough to not only speak to it, but have a strong opinion and know what you can and can't do to help. One thing that I've done in the last couple of months is I just make it a habit of regularly writing the White House and being hey, this is my main priority. This is really important to me. You need to sort this out. because I feel like as an American citizen, that's the most impactful thing I can do, is to pressure my politicians into changing our policy. And so it's nice to have this resource that helps me feel more informed. You know, it's not my only source for information about this topic, and it shouldn't be. No one source should ever be the only place that you get information about anything. But it's a really great source to have. And so if you're not watching Zeteo, then you ought to be. And if you haven't subscribed to it, you ought to, because you won't know as well as I do. You've heard on probably every YouTube channel you've ever watched, every video you ever watched, people begging for likes and comments and subscribes and blah, 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 because that stuff matters on YouTube. That's how things get traction in the algorithm, and that's how it gets spread to more people. It's far more efficient for you to comment and like and watch a video to spread it than to, say, just share it, because you're helping up its profile for people outside of just your social circle. And depending on what social media platform you're on, you're also at the same time simultaneously upping the profile for the people that are connected to you already. So I 100% recommend Zeteo. I have been extremely pleased with it. Very surprised at how easily accessible it is. And, you know, it's something I think that we ought to support. You know, shame on MSNBC for this. They had a true star of intellectual thought and journalism in their employ, and they messed that up. And I am really surprised that they did that, because I think they made a choice in the short term that'll not pay off for them in the long term. And maybe they might just make someone who's genuine competition for them, because we certainly could use that. You know, people love to paint MSNBC as the analog of Fox, which of course it isn't in any way. They do not carry water for the Democratic Party nearly the way that Fox does for the Republican Party, but it's still not, there's still nothing like Fox for people. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that Fox is a good thing for Republicans. I don't think it makes their lives better. You know, I think it makes them angrier, and I think it makes it easier for them to be manipulated into voting against their own interests. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't necessarily want an analog to that, but it would be nice to have more choices on the left than just MSNBC. On the left, you know, that aren't explicitly for right-wing people. How about that? That's probably about as good as we're gonna get. Because, like, honestly, it's funny to me, you know, anytime I try to watch CNN, I'm like, geez Louise, they're really bending over backwards to try to appeal to Republicans. And the Overton window is shifted so far to the right that if you're trying to appeal to Republicans, you're very far to the right. So CNN is just, it's not a good resource as far as I'm concerned. There's so many other better resources. PBS NewsHour, NPR, sometimes BBC. I don't know, it depends. You have to be careful with them, especially anything related to trans issues. They're just a nightmare. But there's some other international news services that are pretty good. There's places that you can go, but it would be nice to have more options, especially ones that are as accessible as Zeteo apparently is going to be, because it has been so far. So That's what I got for you today, kiddos. Nieces and nephews and nibblings and whatnot. I hope that you have a lovely day. And I don't know if you've been watching the reflection of the H-bomber video, vaccine video, and my Betsy Johnson picture there, but I have. I might have to do this like going forward. It's like a lot easier for me to not like wander off and look at something else. Anyway, take care of yourselves. Oh, bye.